Anime has a fascination with a particular stock character trope that you will find in most of them. The harmless-looking underdog who's too good for the world and too adorable to ignore. These characters have quite the character arc, and their development in an anime series is nothing less than a coming-of-age story. In the Hellsing storyline, Seras Victoria ticks off all of these boxes from the get-go. You could pretty much say that Seras Victoria's life is turned upside down by sheer accident when she gets caught in a crossfire and becomes a victim of Alucard's bullet. Or you could just call it destiny that she crossed paths with the world's first vampire to become his fledgling. Either way, there is no denying that Alucard's police girl bites off her own niche to become one of the strongest fighters of the Hellsing organization. She's undoubtedly the one with the highest sense of undying loyalty for both her master and her commander-in-chief, Sir Integra. This transformational journey of Seras Victoria is partly because of her own moral code, but a lot more of it comes from her anatomy as a newly born vampire. In today's video, we are going to understand how Seras Victoria is in a different league of her own, thanks to her unique vampiric anatomy. Who is Seras Victoria? How does she get involved with Hellsing? We may have told you that Seras Victoria comes off as a harmless underdog police girl, but don't take our word for that just yet. It's like someone old and wise once said, "No one here gets out alive. No one here comes without a story to go on." While the first part of this saying might not apply to Seras Victoria, the second one does. This seemingly harmless police girl had reasons more personal than just saving people and stopping crime to join the police force. Seras Victoria is no stranger to the police life. Her father was in the police force but worked as an undercover agent. This job literally killed him and his wife, leaving Seras Victoria alone to watch the gruesome murder scene as a kid. Yep, it's very messed up. Seras Victoria's father was on the verge of taking down one of the biggest mafia rings when he was discovered as an undercover agent. He was an honest policeman who died the death of a thug. Before Seras's father could get any help from his government or even hide, he was confronted in his home by two hitmen sent by the mafia ring. He was shot dead and the assignment was almost just about killing him. But the hitmen were twisted and sadistic men who didn't stop there. When Seras Victoria hid herself, the hitmen killed her mother. But even as a kid, she couldn't bear the sight of murder and charged on the hitmen with a fork and stabbed one in the eye. The hitman then shot Seras Victoria and she sat bleeding. If this wasn't enough, one of the hitmen claimed that her mother's body was not dead and still warm. He then raped the dead body in front of Seras Victoria. These brutal and gruesome murders were perhaps Seras Victoria's first brush with crime and murder. It also serves as a huge factor for her to join the police force and also develops her strong moral code. This moral code in Hellsing is unrivaled and makes Seras Victoria the most heroic female character with a high moral ground. She never pollutes, even in the most desperate situations. Our first look at Seras Victoria says a lot about her character. During the Cheddar Priest incident, when Seras Victoria is sent with her fellow officers to arrest the priest, she witnesses the brutal murder of all her colleagues. But unlike a usual encounter gone wrong, her colleagues turn into monsters trying to kill at random. Desperate and wounded herself, Seras is forced to act against her own people, and that shocks her into guilt. This is where Alucard meets her the first time and bites his vampiric powers into her when he sees an acute survival instinct. In a moment of survivalist desperation and the ghosts of her actions haunting her, Alucard finds Seras Victoria moral and worthy enough to become the monster of the night. Though for the longest time, Alucard never disclosed to Seras about his true intentions to turn her into a vampire, it's pretty obvious why he did it. Seras Victoria possesses an iron will to never give up, and she really has the moral high ground to not abuse her vampiric powers. Finally, as destiny would have it, she escaped death by accepting Alucard's bite and becoming his vampire fledgling. This is a point of transformation not only for Seras Victoria's character, but also her anatomy. Let's understand how this episode in her life changes her into one of the fiercest combatants of the Hellsing organization. Does Serass become a full vampire after Alucard bites her? What makes her different? Seras Victoria's transformation into a vampire isn't a one-shot process. She doesn't become a full vampire from the moment Alucard bites during the Cheddar Priest incident. She becomes Alucard's fledgling and is bound to him with a master-servant bond, bound from sheer instinct. Seras Victoria is bound to Alucard anatomically and shares most of the vampiric abilities a true vampire has, but without the same sharp effectiveness. As a fledgling vampire, Serass inherits peak strength and durability, enhanced reflexes, regeneration, speed, the third eye, and soul absorption. Being a police girl, she's trained well in hand-to-hand combat and knows a fair bit of martial arts. The combined power of these abilities are well demonstrated in her final fight against John Valentine, her face-off with the Millennium Vampires, and then using her sharp eyes to shoot down others like Jessica. Her vision is sharper than any human and can hunt down victims from far off distances like a sniper rifle does. As for the second step of a vampiric transformation, Seras Victoria stays a fledgling vampire for a long time. She doesn't turn into a full vampire from Alucard's bite, as it would require her to drink human blood of a real person. But she has inner conflicts with the idea of drinking human blood and accepting herself as a Draculina. This adds to a constant hesitation on her part to accept human blood or drink it from a person, and keeps delaying her transformation into a true vampire until the very end of the Hellsing story. Why does she hesitate? Despite knowing that she will only grow weaker if she doesn't drink blood? Let's unravel the complications. Does Seras's body reject blood anatomically? Does it make her weaker? Speaking of anatomical changes in Seras Victoria, it's important to note that the power source for her remains the same as any other vampire in the Hellsing canon. But her relationship with blood is pretty complicated, and that's the reason for her growing weaker. It's not that Seras Victoria's anatomy rejects blood, but she refuses to drink human blood for the majority of the series due to her aversion to hurting humans. Let's take a closer look with a quick analogy. If you look at Tokyo Ghoul's Ken Kaneki and how his life changes, it has a similar trajectory. Since the start of his time as a half ghoul and half human operative, he hates the idea of consuming humans to keep his ghoul form in power. It's essentially food for ghouls and gives them power for a long time, and it's important for their sustenance. But Ken Kaneki is introduced as this meek and gentle soul who would rather take a beating for others than inflict pain on them. He does it because he doesn't like the idea of anyone suffering. It's a shred of his humanity that always makes him put himself in the way of harm, even if it means getting bullied. It is the same version of humanity that Seras Victoria shares. Sure, her origin story gives her a different motivation to protect people as a police girl and then a vampire. But the fact of the matter is that both Seras and Kaneki don't like the idea of hurting anyone. While Kaneki resorts to hunting ghouls only and sipping numerous cups of coffee, Seras consistently refuses the blood bags kept in her room in the Hellsing manner. Their human morals are still pretty much alive in them, and it makes them refuse their main source of food even if their anatomy demands to accept it. As for Kaneki, he doesn't really need to eat humans every day, but just enough to keep him alive and going. It pretty much works the same in Seras Victoria's case. She has to drink human blood to sustain and also activate her latent true vampire abilities. The longer she goes on without drinking human blood, the weaker she grows as a vampire. For Kaneki, his body also plays a part with regards to digesting the human food. It's difficult for Kaneki to digest human food, and that makes his aversion to it even stronger. But for Seras, it's a matter of principle alone. Nevertheless, Seras, like Kaneki, realizes that if she doesn't drink human blood, she will quickly pass out or die. In the 2001 anime series run of Hellsing, this is a major conflict in the storyline for Seras, where she finally gives up and drinks medicated blood. In the manga, this is different. Seras drinks drops of Sir Integra's blood to keep on going. Not drinking human blood does make Seras an incomplete Draculina, reaching a fatigue state, but that doesn't mean she is weak. Now let's see how strong Seras Victoria can get. How does Seras's Berserk mode enhance her senses? Is she more durable than fortified walls? They say that it's the quietest people you wouldn't want to piss off because of what they turn into, and that is especially true when you have a timid-looking character like Seras Victoria. Seras usually fights with her vampire form and a lot of human consideration still in her mind, but there is another side to her that makes prominent appearances throughout the series. We like to call it her Berserk mode. If you put enough stress and anger on Seras Victoria, she becomes as angry as the Hulk and very ferocious with her attacks. Her abilities are on a peak level in the same way as Goku would have when he takes on his Super Saiyan form. There are major perks to this second personality of Seras Victoria, as it enhances her anatomy to tap into her full potential as a vampire. This Berserk mode gives her sharp vision that far surpasses most Olympic sharpshooters and usual military sniper rifle soldiers. With the training of a police girl and the eye of a vampire, vampire, Serass was able to shoot down Jessica, Zorin Blitz, and many other on-ground characters who were creating too many problems for the human forces of the Hellsing organization from inhuman distances and angles. When in Berserk mode, Seras Victoria doubles up as a sniper for the Hellsing forces and Alucard as well. Besides her sniper vision, Serass can use the full strength of her vampiric muscles to carry any heavyweight weapon you or Walter can throw at her. Her footing is also something that's enhanced with immense grip and strength. It helps her stand in her position during heavy fire and just recoils from major weapons she uses throughout the series. As for the greatest potential of Seras Victoria's Berserk mode, don't even think of standing in her sight. Serass's eyes change from her usual shade of mellow blue to a dangerous scarlet red in Berserk mode. This indicates that her range can simply wipe out an entire mass of ghouls in the lobby, as she did during the Valentine brothers' attack on the Hellsing Manor. If this isn't enough, she even ripped apart Zorin Blitz's face to shreds by slamming it on a wall and running straight till the end of the corridor. Overall, Seras Victoria really riffs the soul out of her enemies like a guitarist does with an epic solo in a live concert. As far as strength is concerned, the surprises of Seras Victoria's Berserk mode doesn't just stop here. She has even withstood and bested Alucard's arch-enemy Father Anderson. Father Anderson is really a big deal to handle, and Seras Victoria's most notable beat on him has to be when she stops Father Anderson from killing Alucard by the end of the Battle of London. Seras Victoria, in her angry mode, holds off Father Anderson just enough to let her master recover and come back stronger. To top the charts, her Berserk mode also helps her to carry and absorb heavy recoils from her weapons of choice, Halkonen 1 and Halkonen 2. These are as good as cannons that need to be mounted and fixed on strong walls like the one that you usually see in forts and castles. But that's no matter to Serass when she's a vampire, or just in her Berserk mode. It's just featherweight and perfect for her, even if she looks like a kid trying to hold the temple's pillar in her arms. Serass can hold them, fire them, and not even flinch her eyes. But you just won't see her Berserk mode coming or her red eyes flaming in anger, so better stay out of her way and sight. What happens when Serass awakens her full powers? Where does she now rank in the Hellsing universe? The vampire anatomy works more like genetics. Genes pass on hereditary strengths just as much as they gift you with your forefathers' flaws. Being bitten by a vampire follows the same logic. Here, the power of the vampire is identically passed down to the new vampire. And if you were bitten by Alucard, do you really think you would be anything less than super strong in your true vampire form? Certainly not. Seras Victoria has a complicated moral ground when it comes to being a vampire. It takes her a long time to accept that she is no longer human, and she needs to drink human blood to keep her strengths as a vampire. It is at the very end of Hellsing that Serass actually drinks human blood from a human. Previously, we see her drink blood from medical pouches in her room in Hellsing 2001, or a few drops of Integra's blood in the OVA and manga. But when Zorin Blitz scrapes her eyeballs and kills Pip without mercy, Serass is pretty much down to her last bit of strength. With a desperate need for strength and also to avenge Pip, she drinks his blood on his insistence. This finally wakes up the true vampire staying dormant in Serass, and her transformation as a vampire is complete. Now let's look at what this implies. Not only does Seras Victoria gain all the default vampiric powers to full effect, but she also activates the powers of Alucard that were always in her. As mentioned before, getting bit by Alucard gave Serass all his powers and also the extra features the Hellsing organization tweaked into Alucard's anatomy. That's precisely why Seras Victoria has a shadow matter arm after her left arm is chopped off by Zorin Blitz. Shadow matter manipulation is one of the chief abilities of Alucard, and Seras Victoria inherits them. It is activated only after she drinks Pip's blood, and she retains her shadow matter to defeat Zorin. Besides shadow matter, her regeneration capabilities improve higher than a notch as she regenerates her eyes, and her strength is restored in a snap during her face-off with Zorin. Thirdly, she can now travel at super speed to dodge bullets, travel across corridors in a blink, and miss, move, or just fly across London to reach where she is needed. She also demonstrates the full power of her third eye after drinking Pip's blood and becoming a true vampire. Serass breaks out of Zorin's illusions and goes on to defeat her in a superhuman rage that kills all her inhibitions and makes her fearless. This fearlessness of Seras Victoria is then seen in the face-off with the Captain. The Captain, as a werewolf, was able to intimidate Serass, but after becoming a complete vampire, Serass showered blows after blows that would would break her bones. But she just doesn't stop. She recovers and keeps fighting until one of them is finally down. It wasn't an easy fight with the captain, but Serass had no fear anymore that could hold her back. As for her face-offs with Father Anderson, he pretty much realizes that Serass is no more a fledgling vampire, but a proper, true vampire, who will be too hard to take down. His cronies from Iscariot also face the true form of Serass, and we are pretty sure they pissed in their pants. Her shadow matter and its use are the most important change in strength that you can notice once Serass becomes a full vampire. She can do just about anything with her shadow matter. She can make bat-like wings and fly, use 2 guns at once, create a bulletproof shield, set up an omniscient surveillance all over Helsing Manor, or just mock Alucard by making a copycat double of his image. It is not an understatement to say that after drinking Pip's blood, Seras Victoria only grows to be the strongest character in the Helsing canon. Well, if we see how Helsing ends, Seras Victoria stands tall, victorious, and perhaps the Helsing organization's last man standing. Last person standing with Sir Integra. So that's technically the last woman standing. All things considered, it's safe to say that when the dust settles in London and Alucard is forced by Schrödinger to take voluntary retirement for 30 plus years, Seras Victoria remains the undisputed strongest character in the Helsing universe. Quite the character transformation from a fledgling to take her master's place as Helsing's new trump card. Why does Serass's left arm never regenerate after her awakening? Seras Victoria not regenerating her left arm despite having the complete abilities of a true vampire has often confused audiences. But the answer to this confusion can be plainly found if you trace why Seras Victoria keeps her shadow matter intact on her left arm side. Ever since drinking Pip's blood, Serass develops shadow matter that she can manipulate to do almost anything. This involves flying with bat-like wings, dodging bullets at super speed, moving across battlefields in an instant, using multiple weapons at once, creating bulletproof shields, or simply reaching out to anyone with sharp knife-like edges. Her shadow matter can do it all and some more. So it's pretty evident that Seras Victoria comes to like her shadow matter left arm more, as it is her most versatile weapon in her true full vampire form. Now, wouldn't it be a mistake and a huge waste not to use your greatest weapon against the Millennium? So the decision is entirely tactical for Serass, as it helps her do almost anything in the battle after killing Zorin Blitz. Is Serass as strong as Alucard at the end of the series? There is no questioning Alucard's powers and its superiority, but by the end of the series, the table does turn in favor of Seras Victoria. There are major anatomical changes that happen in Alucard and Serass by the end, and they both happen in the opposite directions. Schrödinger, now living and dead within Alucard by the end of the series, infects all of Alucard's familiars. By doing this, Alucard cannot recognize any of his familiars, and he is as good as alone and down to 1. On the other hand, Seras Victoria drinking Pip's blood activates all her latent vampiric powers in her true form. What's more is that she can also tap into all of Alucard's natural vampiric abilities and the tweaked ones given by the Helsing organization. She can do this simply because she is a vampire born from Alucard's spirit. Alucard, on the other hand, has to take a step back and go into incognito mode. He is presumably dead for the world, but needs another 30 plus years to kill all of his millions of familiars to start over. It's sort of like Alucard's resurgence in the end of the series is his second life and chance to start from scratch. So yes, Seras Victoria is indeed as strong as Alucard was when the series started, but there is no definite answer that can come from comparing Seras Victoria's full vampire form with Alucard's comeback form in the end of the series. This is simply because even though Alucard has lost all his familiars, he hasn't been able to vanquish Schrödinger and is cursed to live with him for the next timeline of his eternity. With Schrödinger in him, Alucard also has Schrödinger's power and form. This makes Alucard the same as Schrödinger. He can be present in London or in China in an instant just by thinking about it. He can pretend to die and live live again just by thinking about it. So this sort of makes up for his lost familiars, but the effectiveness of this new ability stays untested in the end for us to decide what exactly is the potency of Alucard's powers by the end of the series. But as far as Alucard and Seras Victoria are concerned, Serass still maintains a high respect and regard for him. She's the only one who believes that Alucard will make a comeback. Until then, Seras Victoria protects the Hellsing organization as its new ace weapon. Even though powers have exchanged hands, the dynamic of Alucard and Seras Victoria's relationship stays the same, and to a good extent it is safe to assume that their power dynamic is also the same as it was throughout the series. Marvelous verdict. As far as underdogs go, Seras Victoria will win your hearts as one of your all-time favorites. But talking about her anatomy and strengths, the marvelous verdict is all in her favor as the new Draculina of London town. Right from the start of Hellsing till the very end, Seras Victoria only grows and never changes her moral stand. Definitely one of the finest characters Kota Hirano has written in the Hellsing canon. You can pretty much rely on Serass to protect you till the end of her life, if you only could convince her to leave Alucard and join your side. If you only could convince her to leave Alucard and join your side. Until then, watch this space for another marvelous video to know who you can rope in as your next supernatural friend and ally.